We have in the past, I think, tended to segment the audiences only to the number we can keep in our heads. AI has unlimited potential to manage that.
Welcome to Knowledge Improves Lives, a podcast about public health communications and technology. Your host is Ginger Plummer-Mayer, Chief Communications Strategist at IQ Solutions, a strategic communications and technology firm with a 30-year track record of improving the impact of health programs serving our nation. Over the past 16 years with IQ Solutions, Ginger has created big-scale and big-impact awareness and behavior change campaigns on issues plaguing our nation, such as drug and alcohol misuse, mental health, tobacco and vaping regulation, and most recently, COVID therapeutics, among others. Her work has gained billions of media impressions for many federal health programs and initiatives, and garnered numerous prestigious awards in both the communication and digital arenas. With Ginger's thought leadership in public health communications, we'll explore the most effective ways to communicate public health messages and connect with America's communities to empower the health and well-being of all.
Hello, and welcome to Knowledge Improves Lives, a podcast produced by IQ Solutions. I'm your host, Ginger Mayer, Chief Communications Officer here at IQ. For 30 years, we've improved the quality of life through data-driven communications and digital solutions. Today, we'll learn more about artificial intelligence, how it understands data, and how to advocate for AI in public health. To help us learn more, we're joined by Anthony Cousins, Cision's Executive Director of AI Strategy. Throughout his 10-year career in AI technology leadership, Anthony has helped brands and agencies navigate misinformation and harmful online content. At the intersection of public health and public relations, we're especially eager to hear Anthony's perspective on what works and how we and our federal partners can tap into the quickly evolving world of AI in public health communications. I appreciate you joining us, Anthony.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad we'll be able to get your perspective on this topic. Let's first get to know you a bit more. What sparked your interest in AI and misinformation?
So I got into AI kind of halfway through my career, but I'd already spent 10 or more years in communications and technology, this place and that. So I started out as a developer, I ended up in the press office. From the press office, and this is a public communications press office, right, for the Ministry of Defense. And then went from there into counterterrorism, Afghanistan and Iraq, did some strange jobs. But communications was like a through line throughout my entire career, as was technology. I kept coming back to those two things. And then in 2013, when I got into my first kind of AI startup, that was for me just the most exciting technology. And this is 2013. Didn't really work all that well, if I'm honest, right? We were pushing the boundaries of what AI at the time could do. And that was, I just so excited about the potential for artificial intelligence. And so I kept artificial intelligence in my career for the next 10 years. And it wasn't until I think probably the Brexit campaign in the UK, which was heavily influenced by misinformation, also heavily influenced by things like Cambridge Analytica scandals. And then the US elections that followed that, the impact of misinformation and disinformation on us, on all of us, right? In every aspect of our society, it was starting to creep in, from how we manage relationships, in our own friendship circles, in our families. It was starting to create divisions where there weren't divisions previously. So I was like, this for me is the opposite of the amazing potential of the technology I saw in 2009, 2010, when I was in the Middle East, looking at the results of the Arab Spring, right, the social media revolutions. And I thought that was algorithm based, but a real win for democracy, right? A country that wasn't democratic got itself a new government because it wanted one, in part using this technology. And that's amazing. And over the course of the last 10 years, I just basically watched as that impact became less positive, more and more negative. And so that's what made me want to get back to it back in 2020, when I reached out to Fact Matter and said, hey, do you need help? And they said, well, actually, funny enough, we're looking for a CEO. So it's kind of, I saw the potential of it. I was excited by it. And I watched almost on the sidelines at that point as to how bad it was having an impact on our communities and our society. So I just needed to get back to it. That was kind of the thing that hooked me back in.
Wow, that's very interesting. I feel like here in the States, it was the Trump-Clinton campaign and fake news.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's some parallels there for sure. So I'm glad you kept up the fight. So we know that artificial intelligence programs like ChatGPT learn from massive amounts of data. The data, however, may contain, as we just mentioned, inaccurate or outdated information. Are there ways to ensure that the program receives correct, high quality data?
Yes. So effectively, if you explain it like this, that ChatGPT has a long-term memory, right? If you compare it to kind of the way human brains work, it has a long-term memory based on what it's been trained on, which you're right, could contain who knows what kind of inaccuracies in who knows what domains. But it also has the ability to have more of a short-term memory, right? Your context window, the little box you type in, you can add information to that, and you can upload information to it as well. And that short-term memory can help prevent some of the issues of that kind of long-term memory recall by giving it more information that you've chosen. You're telling it, this is accurate information, please use this. So there are ways you as a user, an individual user of ChatGPT, can sort of offset the challenges of the hallucinations that come from the long-term memory issue. Although my best kind of recommendation to avoid that problem is probably not to use ChatGPT as a source of factual information. Right? That's not really what it's best at, in my opinion. That's not where we should be getting the biggest impact on our time savings and efficiencies. That's not what I'd recommend. So I think it's also about the use cases specifically. It's great at generating copy, right? If you give it good direction and context, don't rely on it as being your fact checker. I think is the best advice I would give.
Thanks, Anthony. I will stop tomorrow. We all need to remember that artificial intelligence is only as good as the information we give it. In our first episode, we spoke about information bias, including how to recognize it in the news and within ourselves. How does bias affect AI when it processes data?
This is a perennial challenge, right? We're never going to create any artificial intelligence algorithm that is totally non-biased, right? Because it's effectively always been trained by humans, and humans are biased. So the benefit of the bias of AI is, for the most part, it is usually consistent and explainable. So you can detect it, right? And AI is consistently biased. If you train an algorithm to look at sentiment, for example, and in our solutions, right, our sentiment model will give you the same result today as it gave you yesterday, as it gave you the day before. So if there is a bias in that algorithm, you could sort of account for it in the way you work. Unlike humans, which wake up one morning in a bad mood and are differently biased to the way they were the previous day. So there is a benefit, I think, to the bias of AI, not just in its consistency, but also in the fact that it's consistently biased and differently biased to you. So I think one thing is issue, and this is something that I think we've lost in our society, right, is the ability to sort of take a point of view from someone else and respect it and understand it and use it. AI can look at your decisions and give you its view and challenge your view on the sentiment, on kind of narratives or topic analysis. It can challenge your view. It may not be right, it may be biased, but being differently biased, I think, is also useful to challenge the bias we have in ourselves.
Yeah, that dichotomy. Yeah, we're not comfortable with both things can be true. We've also heard about cognitive computing, which can assist human decision making and offer more personalized solutions than artificial intelligence. What are a few notable differences between AI and cognitive computing?
In the use of what we think is AI in those voice assistants like Siri and Alexa actually isn't AI. That's all hard-coded and programmed by teams of developers. The reason why that experience is limited to what's the weather today is because it's just listening for those keywords and giving you the programmed response. I think that is definitely not going to be as effective or as impactful as adding generative AI to those interactions. I mean, I am really looking forward to, honestly, I'm really looking forward to, quite scared about the potential to add generative AI to those kind of voice assistants, because on the upside, right, for the positives, my nan could have a conversation with her voice assistant all day long, right? And you could listen to her and go, oh, isn't it terrible? Right? It could have that kind of relationship where it's giving you that kind of almost dealing with loneliness, dealing with if it's specifically programmed, dealing also with mental issues, I think is something that we could look for that. But on the flip side, it's going to cause a bunch of mental issues because people will form attachments. They will form kind of like, I think we underestimate how quickly humans anthropomorphize technology, right? If you've not seen the film Her with Joaquin Phoenix, right? That will happen. 100% that's going to happen and cause a whole bunch of different problems. So I think, I think the series and the Alexas are going to get a massive upgrade, albeit I don't know exactly when it's happened. We can already do it. If you've seen some of the most recent examples from ChatGPT, right, with the 4.0 model, really natural, nuanced voice with even with pauses included, like it and it and it it makes those sounds in between its speech patterns to make it seem more human, which is unbelievable because it's so natural. You immediately forget you're talking to an AI. So that I'm really looking forward to the introduction of that into the voice assistant world.
Interesting, a little scary, but also exciting. But we have done some work here at IQ in looking at how voice assistant technology can help with dementia and Alzheimer's, and it actually being a early identification of those conditions. If a person, say you set it up in your parents' house and they are asking the same question over and over and over again, that it could potentially be symptomatic of early set dementia.
Exactly. That's going to be, what a wonder that's going to be for detecting those kind of conditions. And on the flip side, just need to watch out for people trying to get married to it.
Yeah. What are a few other ways public health practitioners can use these programs to build and distribute public health messages?
So I think this is the fascinating thing about AI. I think it can help you in almost every single step of the current workflows and journeys, but to a kind of a greater or lesser degree. So I think the way I'm seeing it pan out is that effectively you want to be using the AI for the most mundane parts of those processes, right? So if you break down the kind of the distribution of communications, right, to an audience, starting with best practice, of course, we all follow, right? Objectives, set our KPIs, get that kind of upfront, doing your audience analysis, doing your distribution planning, creating the content, actually getting it out there, dealing with the responses. Like if you break it down into those kinds of tasks, each of those tasks breaks down into smaller tasks. And then each of those tasks could be used by AI or maybe more human. And so the way that I think we're looking at it is effectively looking at every single workflow of a communicator and figuring out for this particular workflow, what is the individual part that the AI can do best? And what is the part the human doesn't really want to spend their time doing? Distribution is a great example, right? Where you've got, you're looking for journalists or people or creators or influencers to cover your specific kind of story and what you want to get out there. You almost certainly do not know personally all of the potential creators and influencers and journalists that are going to be interested in your story. You may have a really decent black book, right, of kind of the people you want to go to, but you can't look for all the others, which leads all of us still to the spray and pray approach, right? And we all still sort of have that in our toolkit, right? So I think that's something where AI can help with. Yes, you've got your personal relationships, but what can we do to use your personal relationships to understand what are the kinds of people we want to get to? And based on this story, what are the kind of people we're going to get to? Based on the articles all these journalists have written, which of those are most likely to be interested? Just making that more data-driven. And that's a task that a human is going to do not as well as an AI, right? Because you cannot read all the articles of all the journalists. So I think for each of the tasks, it's going to be a different level of engagement. And that's actually the kind of things that software providers like us at Cision and Brandwatch are trying to figure out, like what is the right amount of AI involvement in this particular task. But the other thing I would say is that it's also sort of front-loaded to the human. We want to make sure that the human is setting the direction, the goals, what are you trying to achieve? Because the more of that we have, the better the output from the AI. So it's also, whilst it's kind of going to be AI and human in a mixed amount for each of the tasks, the human is definitely going to be upfront in setting what is it we're actually trying to achieve here.
I love that response. I can definitely tell you're a communicator at heart, which is a great intersection with AI, especially for our purposes as a health communications firm. We tend to look at like psychographics and demographics of an audience. And I never thought that to think about putting that into an AI program to create a marketing plan.
Yeah, the really interesting thing I think about specifically when it comes to audience analysis is we have in the past, I think, tended to segment the audiences only to the number we can keep in our heads. AI has unlimited potential to manage that.
Wow.
So if you create like 5 or 6 different audience groups and you get down to that kind of level of segmentation, because that's the limit of your human brain and also the size of your team and etc., it can go down to 20, 30, 40, 50. Pick a number and it will get down to that level of segmentation and allow you therefore to personalize your content much more effectively to those audiences. So it's like a multi-threaded approach. And I think this kind of came to me last year when we were building some prototypes and we were looking at the user interface and thinking through how do we enable a human to kind of see all of these groups? And I was like, actually, we don't necessarily need them to create every group. The AI can manage all of the groups and create the content to align to those groups way more than a human can. All the human needs to do is like review the output, right? Check does all that make sense? Because ultimately the human is still responsible for what you put out into the world, right? Yeah. So whilst the AI might suggest a solid key message for a specific group, it's still going to be the human's responsibility to go, is that right? Is that morally and ethically right as an approach for that group? Because the AI won't have that sense in built. So I'm really excited by the potential of increased personalization.
I love that response because it doesn't take away, it changes our task from the day-to-day, as you mentioned, like mundane tasks of developing the marketing plan and puts us more in a consultative and oversight perspective. And especially as we support government agencies, there's a lot of question about what's appropriate for the government to do. Should they even be targeting and how they target? So, but it allows us to have more time to do that effectively and efficiently. So that's very helpful breakdown.
100%. And I think the other thing I'd follow up on is I think in the way that this is being talked about in the industry, there is a kind of a sense that this will make everyone more strategic, right? But the thing I would say is it's not necessarily all of the tactical tasks are AI and all the strategic tasks are human. There is also, because that would also cause problems, right, for junior, like new entrants to the industry who don't necessarily have the experience, right? So I think what I would say is it's not necessarily about strategic and tactical. It's literally about the type of task. Is it about manipulating data or is it about reasoning? Is it about communications and is it about relationships? And there's tactical relationship tasks, right? Picking up the phone and calling someone and meeting someone. That isn't necessarily a strategic task, but it is the kind of task we're going to have more time for in the future. So one thing I wanted to clarify is I don't necessarily see it as just strategic and tactical. Yeah. It's all about the type of task. I think our jobs are going to change. And actually, some of the things we now consider we don't have time for, we will have time for and make time for them in the future.
Yeah. That's very helpful. Thanks for the clarification on that. Our last few questions might be the most challenging. Many people get their information about AI from the news, which can skew negative and sometimes restate misinformation about AI. How can we educate people about the positive aspects of AI who only hear negative things about it?
Well, you're right that's a challenging question. So I think, and it's interesting because the journalists, in some ways, right, as a journalist does, are really only reflecting the inherent views of the audiences. And in many cases, we have all been programmed by decades of cultural phenomenon related to AI that effectively give us a sense of, I'm going to say Terminator. And as soon as I say that word, I know every single person listening to this is visualizing kind of a shiny metal skull with the red eyes and the screaming, right? That's kind of what's in our heads. That's what we've been programmed with to think about AI for the last 30 or 40 years. And it's hard because journalists know that that's kind of the cultural feeling towards the technology. So they include it in their articles. They know it's going to resonate. So we've got to almost undo many, many years worth of programming into our culture that AI can actually be positive. So I think, unfortunately, there is no quick answer to this other than doing your hardest to promote those good causes, right? AI enabling people to walk when they would never have been able to in the past, detecting cancer and detecting illnesses faster than we did previously. We just talked about some of the use cases of kind of detecting dementia. Like we've got to talk more about the positive aspects of this not just, I think, in health is an obvious one, but also in ways like accessibility. So, voice interfaces alone are going to make a huge difference to people who can't look at screens, can't see screens, and can't engage with a keyboard or a mouse in the way that we do. So I think that's a really important aspect of it, which just goes overlooked because we're too busy worrying about whether or not they're going to come and kill us all.
With Google now rolling out AI overviews at the top of search results pages, how can public health organizations help people get accurate health information, even if users are not clicking through to the organization's website?
That is an excellent question, because this is fundamentally going to change the internet, albeit kids these days, right, are engaging with social media to get their answers. They're almost replacing the Google search. There is still a huge number of people conducting Google searches. And that relationship between the human and the search engine is fundamentally going to change when you don't need to get sent a list of 10 websites and the links, go to each website, create in your head your own version of the truth or your own version of the answer from ingesting all the information from those websites, when effectively the AI, whether it's Gemini or whether it's OpenAI, is going to kind of create that answer for you based on it reading those websites. That is a fundamental change, not just in the way the internet works and our relationship with search, but the monetization of the internet. Because at the moment, each of those publishers, right, get eyeballs on their content, and they get ads served on the content because of that, and they make money because of that. How those publishers, frankly, survive when this becomes the norm for engaging the internet, I think will really drastically impact people's strategies for getting information out to the internet. We don't yet know what the conversational kind of search version of SEO is. So at the moment, you can sort of, as we all know, you have SEO, you optimize your content to try and get it to place for certain keywords, etc. We don't yet know what the version of that is going to look like for conversational search. We don't know how content will be monetized and what difference that will make to its placement on the answers. And we have very little understanding, of course, because of the almost black box nature of those large language models, what it's doing to that information in order to create the answer. So the conversation we had earlier about bias becomes really, really important when people are basically asking a question, getting an answer, as opposed to the links to form their own answer. So when it comes to medical and health professionals, unfortunately, they're in the same boat as everybody else, which is nobody knows. It's one we have to keep really, really tight on. We have to watch it really closely and understand and challenge. And this, I think, will be a large proportion of the incoming regulations will look to this, because this has the fundamental potential to change the way populations are thinking.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know there's so much more that's going to evolve from that. I just hope it doesn't feed into humans' nature to naturally take the first answer and go with it. I wish there was some type of warning label that says, and do your own research at the end of it.
I suspect, or at least it may well be the case, that because in the same way that we consume news, we consume the news which reinforces our own views, right? We go to the social media kind of groups that reinforce our own views. That's become kind of nature, and the algorithms have unfortunately kind of reinforced that behavior. Mm-hmm. I think, or at least in some ways I hope, that behavior will be supported by conversational search, such that we're not all forced to consume the specific kind of bias that ChatGPT has, or even the specific kind of bias that Gemini has. We'll have options for a variety of different interpretations of that. So we'll have a variety and a spectrum of truth for because obviously there's black and white facts, right? Mm-hmm. And there's kind of binary sort of ways to look at numbers, figures, etc. But those aren't the things that cause us problem in our society. The things that cause us problem are the gray areas in between. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that, I think, is where we need to get some options and some spectrum for how we interpret the truth via those search engines. God gave us creativity, right? It gave us our ability to create, from fire to steam to social media and the internet. Those are all things, they're effectively all tools that we've used. And if you look overall, it's mostly made our world a better place. It's mostly made us come together. It's enabled us to share information and generally kind of increase the well-being and the development of all societies. The way I look at AI, and the reason why I get up in the morning, is not because I see the potential of AI to kill us all, because that would be pretty self-defeating. And it's not because I think the idea of AI is going to put a load of people out of work, because that also wouldn't be a very positive thing to get up in the morning and work for. I like the idea of AI forcing us to consider, what are we actually doing with our lives, right? And I don't think God put us here in order to effectively spend our lives sat at a desk moving data on a spreadsheet. I don't think that's what he had in mind. But I do think that human relationships and connection and meaning and purpose, which are all things we will have more time for if the AI is taking care of the things we don't really want to do and have to do to kind of keep the society that we've built running. That's what gets me going. That's what I think is the purpose of it.
I love that. I think it's a great way for us to end this podcast. And what I would love to do is let our listeners know where they can find you and your work online.
LinkedIn is my social network of choice. So if you find me on Anthony Cousins or look up Cision, and you'll find me there.
Thanks for that, Anthony. We'll put that information in our show notes for everyone to find. Thank you to our listeners. You can find IQ Solutions online at iqsolutions.com or IQ Solutions on all social media platforms. We'll list them in our show notes to make it easy to learn about us and what we do. We also ask that you rate and review Knowledge Improves Lives on your platform of choice so more people learn about us. We look forward to bringing you more insights and methods to keep everyone in every community healthy. Stay well, and we'll see you in our next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Knowledge Improves Lives. Visit iqsolutions.com to see how we empower well-being across the lifespan for all. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter to learn about our award-winning services, latest projects, and impact. Rate and review us on your favorite podcast app so more people can benefit from everything we learn. Subscribe today to hear every episode as soon as it's released. Stay well.